Wei Wuxian stood motionless. Lan Wangji saw him remain silent, assuming he was quietly reflecting. He stepped forward, took Wei Wuxian's hand, and examined his wound. Fortunately, it was only reddened and not broken. He bent down and gently blew on it, as if to ease the pain, then reached out to remove the water grass from Wei Wuxian's hair. Wei Wuxian stared at his actions in a daze, and suddenly a thought popped into his mind. An inexplicable fear tugged at his heart, and he turned to softly kiss Lan Wangji's lips. Lan Wangji was stunned by the kiss. Wei Wuxian grabbed his shoulders and leaned in to kiss him again. Lan Wangji's breath became erratic, thinking Wei Wuxian desired more. He frowned slightly and dodged the kiss. A terrifying suspicion in Wei Wuxian's heart seemed to be confirmed. He once thought that his spontaneous desires, constant yearning, and almost reckless teasing were silently enjoyed by Lan Wangji. When their burning desires ignited, they almost wanted to tear each other apart, merging into their breath, their blood, and that wandering soul. He believed Lan Wangji felt the same way, enjoying it as much as he did, unable to control himself. But now, as he suddenly stood from an observer's perspective, things seemed different. One party was ignited by the relentless teasing and stimulation of the other, helplessly aroused, driven mad, unable to bear it. He pressed the other down to release the burning desire. The party being teased actually despised it, indulging and enduring only to avoid hurting the feelings of the other. In careful thought, Lan Wangji, originally a pure-hearted, indifferent person, would not have revealed such a wild, beastly side if not severely provoked. In the library, if not for Wei Wuxian's reckless behavior, how would Lan Wangji disregard propriety and act openly in such a public place? Even their first night resulted from Wei Wuxian's playful antics, coaxing Lan Wangji into bed. Lan Wangji initially refused, a stance that almost vanished from Wei Wuxian's memory. But what if Lan Wangji never wanted him at all, merely fulfilling the duties of a spouse? If so, Wei Wuxian's belief that they equally desired each other would be nothing but a colossal misunderstanding. Wei Wuxian was stunned by this waking dream thought, as if a storm had abruptly erupted, shattering his sweet illusions and revealing the desolate and barren truth beneath. He suddenly grabbed the person in front of him. Lan Wangji was slightly startled by his unexpected action. Wei Ying. Lan Zhan, Wei Wuxian's voice trembled slightly. I ask you, did you sleep with me because you like me or because we are married? Stunned by his blunt words for a moment, Lan Wangji felt a bit flustered and somewhat bewildered. Why are you asking this? Wei Wuxian's eyes showed a hint of uneasiness as he gazed intently at Lan Wangji and said softly, Answer me. Lan Wangji had never expected to be questioned so directly and seemed at a loss for how to respond. Wei Ying, we are married. Of course, I love you. Wei Wuxian blurted out, What if we weren't married? Lan Wangji's eyes widened slightly. Why are you saying this? Wei Wuxian asked. If we weren't married, would you sleep with me? We are married, Lan Wangji replied, his words firm to the point of being rigid. I can't make such an assumption. Wei Wuxian suddenly grit his teeth. Lan Zhan, don't avoid the question. You just need to answer me. If we weren't married, would you still be willing to sleep with me? Lan Wangji's expression showed a trace of discomfort, as if merely considering such a hypothetical caused him immense pain. After a moment, he said rigidly, If we weren't married, naturally I wouldn't. Wei Wuxian's heart suddenly jolted, and he stared at Lan Wangji, unable to believe what he was hearing. Lan Wangji continued haltingly. Naturally, I wouldn't have inappropriate thoughts or take inappropriate actions toward you. Wei Wuxian's expression suddenly turned blank. In his eyes, a flickering light which was bright sometime and was dim sometime seemed to cast onto Lan Wangji. This was his little old-fashioned, someone who, before knowing him, had never violated family rules, never defied elders, a person so rigid it was almost maddening. How could such a person marry someone as different in character as him, someone whose personality was poles apart, even incompatible like fire and water? When he received the proposal letter from the Gusulan clan, he was as surprised as Uncle Jiang and Jiang Cheng. Immediately he thought of that prophecy, the only prophecy that forced the Lan family who disliked him to lower their status and accept him, who they viewed as unruly and useless. Trying to escape with this thought, he found himself bound and thrown in front of Lan Wangji at the wedding banquet, on an evening bathed in red clouds and dust. Confirming that Lan Wangji was indeed the little old-fashioned, and being resolutely led by him to the hall and kneeling in front of their elders, he changed his mind. He impulsively believed that it was Lan Wangji who chose him. Their brief moonlit encounters, with seeds unknowingly planted, had fermented in his heart into an indescribable love. Those inadvertent smiles and glances, touches, and the vague yet certain flutter in his heart had made Lan Wangji decide on him. Now, he suddenly contemplated a possibility, an emerging possibility, an answer he had believed from the start. What if their marriage had only been brought about because of that prophecy and the pressure from their elders? He could even imagine Lan Wangji kneeling in the grand hall, facing the elders of the Lan clan seated at the high table. Receiving the prophetic script, he silently looked at the name written on it, bowed, and obediently accepted his lifelong arrangement. If the name on the prophetic script wasn't his, would Lan Wangji still accept it calmly? What if the person destined to be with him was not important at all? What mattered was the will of the elders, the so-called arrangement of fate. Lan Zhan, I ask you, why did you marry me? Lan Wangji looked puzzled, as if he didn't understand the reason for such a question. However, Wei Wuxian already had an answer in his heart. He looked into Lan Wangji's eyes and said, "Because you are my destined one." The warmly throbbing thing in his chest suddenly stopped, and a sudden cold sharpness pierced Wei Wuxian. He instantly let go of Lan Wangji's hand. Wei Ying. He hurried over to the clothes he had thrown onto the shore like a piece of torn fabric. When he picked them up, the cold touch made him shiver. Ignoring Lan Wangji's calls, he headed straight ahead. Now he could finally see how naive, how confident, and ultimately how one-sided he had been. When Lan Wangji rushed into the silence room, Wei Wuxian hastily grabbed some clothes from a corner and a few scattered trinkets from the table, stuffed them into a Qiankan bag, and was just about to step out the door with Swibian in hand. Lan Wangji grabbed him. "Where are you going?" Wei Wuxian pushed him away with the hand holding his sword. When the push failed, the hilt of the sword pressed against Lan Wangji's chest. "I'm going home." Lan Wangji stared at him intensely, his chest rising and falling slightly. "You cannot leave," Wei Wuxian asked in surprise. "Why?" With a slight laugh, he continued, "Second young master Lan. Although I am still part of your household, there is no rule preventing me from leaving the cloud recesses. Right? I'm going back to Lotus Pier. Who can stop me?" Catching the abrupt word in Wei Wuxian's speech, Lan Wangji stared at him. A subtle ripple of nervousness passed over his face. His eyes tightened, but his tone softened in disbelief, almost cautiously. "Still?" Wei Wuxian glanced at him, only to be startled by the pain in Lan Wangji's eyes, as if pricked by a tiny needle. He turned away, trying to suppress his emotions, and said, "I don't want to live with you anymore." Upon hearing this, Lan Wangji grabbed him fiercely. The force was so strong that Wei Wuxian felt his bones being crushed as he struggled to break free.